I'm going to warn you right now. What I'm about to tell you isn't some recycled urban legend from the dark web iceberg charts people pass around on Reddit. It's not a story I heard from a friend of a friend. This is something I lived through, something I wish I could forget, something that still follows me every time I close my eyes. Before I start, I need you to understand something. Hackers don't scare easily. We navigate places normal people shouldn't even know exist. We see things the average user couldn't imagine. But that night, when I found that hidden marketplace, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Fear. Real fear. The kind that sinks its teeth into your spine and doesn't let go. You're going to feel the urge to think I'm exaggerating, or that I'm adding dramatic flavor to make this entertaining. Believe me, I gain nothing by telling this. In fact, I lose a lot. Sleep, sanity, whatever trust I had left in the world. Everything I'm about to say comes from a place of brutal honesty. And if you've watched my previous stories, you know I don't sugarcoat anything. I'm telling it because maybe, just maybe, someone out there will understand what I saw and why it should never have existed in the first place. The whole thing started on a Thursday night. I remember it clearly because I had already spent 10 hours staring at my monitor, working on a client request, scraping the back end of a now-defunct darknet forum to recover private messages a guy had deleted before running off with a wallet full of Monero. It was boring work, repetitive, nothing like the adrenaline-fueled hacks people think we do every day. By the time I finished, my brain felt like warm glue. I should have turned off my computer and gone to sleep. But you know that feeling when your curiosity keeps pulling you back in. That was me, exhausted but unable to disconnect. So I opened Tor again. Not the standard browser, of course. I was using my modified build, hardened and stripped of anything unnecessary. My setup that night was the same as always. A strict chain of VPNs, a disposable virtual machine, a clean Mac spoofing cycle, and a custom script that killed the entire OS if any anomaly appeared in the connection. I tell you this not to brag, but to show that I wasn't wandering around like an amateur. What happened didn't happen because I was reckless. It happened because that place wasn't supposed to be found. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just browsing old Onion indexes, seeing which hidden services were still alive after the last purge. Most of them were either fake mirrors, phishing traps, or abandoned markets with broken CAPTCHA pages. I almost closed everything when a line of green text caught my eye. It was part of an outdated index, but the timestamp on the mirror was recent, too recent. Like someone had updated only that single entry while ignoring the rest of the site. That was odd. No one curates individual Onion links like that unless there's a reason. The listing didn't have a name, just a string of random characters, not even in base 32 like most Onions. It looked like a hash, broken into uneven chunks. That alone was suspicious. Onion addresses follow patterns, follow structure. This one looked like something assembled manually, and instead of a description, it simply said, "For vetted access only." No banner, no categories, nothing. It didn't even behave like a normal hyperlink. When I hovered over it, my cursor flickered the way it does when you're pointing at a dead element. But when I clicked it, it responded instantly. The page didn't load like a Tor site. It didn't crawl. It didn't choke on JavaScript. It didn't stall on Handshake. It opened as fast as a local file. Completely black background. No header, no layout. Just one line of text in white monospace font, centered on the screen. Identify. Nothing else, no form, no command box, no prompt. Just that word. Most hackers would have backed out right there, and maybe they were the smart ones. But the word identify wasn't an instruction. It was a challenge. No amateur would build something like this. It reminded me of some of the authentication layers used by intelligence communities, where the login isn't about entering credentials, but proving you understand the architecture behind them. So I typed a single character, not a name, not a username, just A. The page didn't change. I tried again. This time I typed a string of known authentication probes I used to test servers. Combinations that usually reveal hidden fields, break client-side protections, or trigger intentional errors. Nothing. The page stayed exactly the same. Except, I noticed something. Every time I pressed a key, no matter what I typed, the blinking cursor moved 1 pixel to the right. Only one. Perfectly aligned. No text appearing, no input accepted. Just the cursor repositioning itself every time as if counting keystrokes. That meant something. Someone was logging the inputs even though they displayed nothing. But what were they comparing it to? I tried entering one of my old private hash signatures, a 48-character sequence I use only for testing secure environments. It's not something anyone else should know. When I finished typing, the page flickered for less than a second. Then the white text changed. Accepted. My stomach dropped. Accepted meant it recognized the signature. That should be impossible. Absolutely impossible. That sequence isn't stored anywhere except encrypted drive partitions locked behind hardware keys. No cloud sync, no backups. The only times it ever exists in memory are when I type it manually into my own systems. The fact that this hidden marketplace recognized it meant either one of two things. Someone had infiltrated one of my private environments without leaving a trace, or someone had access to a data set containing signatures from hundreds of hackers worldwide, including mine. I didn't know which possibility scared me more. The page went fully black again, and for a few seconds I thought it had crashed. Then a message appeared. Tiny white text in the bottom left corner. Connection relocating. Keep still. Keep still? That was a weird instruction. I couldn't tell if it was metaphorical or literal, but soon the Tor window minimized itself. Automatically. Without keyboard input. Without mouse input. That should never happen. Not in my hardened VM. My entire screen turned black for at least 20 seconds. Then the Tor window reappeared and the UI looked different. Not like any site I'd ever seen. This wasn't HTML. It wasn't JavaScript. It wasn't anything that belonged to a browser. It looked like a terminal overlay. Monochrome, flashing with a faint green tint like old phosphor displays. At the top, a string of numbers kept updating rapidly, like it was cycling through different address layers. Underneath that was a simple line. Verified. Enter quietly. The background faded into what resembled an interface, still minimalistic, still dark, but now there were 6 symbols on the screen arranged in a horizontal line. None of them had labels. They weren't icons like you'd see in normal design. They looked more like sigils, geometric, abstract, almost ceremonial. I hovered over the first one. A tooltip appeared. Materials. The second, requests. The third, witness. The fourth, transfer. The fifth, observations. And the last icon. When I hovered over it, the tooltip didn't appear immediately. Instead, the whole interface froze for 2 seconds. Then the word faded in slowly. Harvest. I've been around some of the darkest corners of the deep web for years, but I had never seen categories like these. Not on drug markets, not on weapon hubs, not on hit-for-hire sites, not even on the forbidden psychology boards or human experimentation forums that only a handful of people even know how to find. These weren't categories. They were roles, functions, opportunities. I clicked materials. The screen didn't load a list. No products, no prices, no vendors. Instead, a single message appeared. You are not authorized to handle raw matter. Elevation required. Elevation. That sounded like a tier system. But markets don't do that. You don't gatekeep buyers. Buyers are the ones who bring money. The only reason to gatekeep is if the marketplace doesn't want you buying things, but contributing to something. I backed out and clicked Requests. This time, a list appeared, but not like a marketplace list. These weren't items being sold. These were solicitations, demands. The first few were strange enough. Sequence reconstruction volunteer needed, high reward. Acquisition of non-indexed footage, specific instructions apply. Neuroresonance mapping assistant sought. Experienced only. At first I thought it was some elaborate roleplay server. But the deeper I scrolled, the more the requests shifted into something darker. Then one line stopped me cold. Biological continuity subject required, age irrelevant. Conditions non-negotiable. That wasn't role play. That wasn't erotic. That wasn't metaphor. That was something real. Something dangerous. Something that should never be asked for by any human being. Every entry had a number of responses next to it. But instead of usernames, they were represented by symbols similar to the ones on the main page. Anonymous, but distinct. That meant it wasn't a free-for-all market. It was a network. A closed, curated, probably invite-only underground system operating on a completely different architecture. And I had just walked into it by accident. I clicked one of the responses under the worst request, expecting to see a message or some encoded content. But when the response opened, the page shifted into something else entirely. It showed what looked like a log, a record, a transcript of correspondence between the requester and the responder. But the messages weren't text. They were timestamps, coordinates, and what looked like biological metrics. Pulses, rates, organ codes. The numbers updated in real time. I felt cold, like someone had injected ice water into my veins. This wasn't a marketplace. This was a system of operations. I backed out again. My instincts were screaming at me to disconnect, wipe the VM, and pretend none of this ever happened. But part of me needed to understand. I clicked the third icon, Witness. At first, nothing loaded. Then the page filled with black thumbnails, rows and rows of them. Hundreds, maybe thousands. No labels, no descriptions. Just pitch-black thumbnails with faint outlines like images captured with no exposure. I clicked one, and that was the moment I realized I had gone too far. The screen flickered. A video feed opened. But it wasn't a normal video. It was live. There was no title, no timestamp, no chat, nothing. Just a dimly lit room, viewed from a ceiling-mounted camera. A person, at least I think it was a person, was sitting on the floor with their back to the wall. Their head hung down, their arms limp at their sides. The skin looked pale, almost gray like a corpse. But then the body moved. Not naturally, not smoothly. It jerked like something was puppeteering it from the inside. I reached for my mouse to close the feed, but the window maximized itself, pushing my cursor away. That shouldn't be possible. The figure in the video raised its head slowly, too slowly, like every centimeter required force. And then its face came into frame, eyes open, mouth slack, pupils contracted unnaturally. It stared directly into the camera, then directly at me. I know how insane that sounds. Cameras don't look back at you. People in videos don't know you're watching. But the way its eyes locked onto mine through the screen, I can't explain it. It felt aware. It felt specific. And then, the feed glitched. Not a normal glitch, not pixelation, not buffering. The person's face flickered into a different face, then another, then another. Hundreds of faces flashing too fast to process. Men, women, children, elderly, all layering over each other like someone was cycling through identities at random, trying to find the right one. I slammed my keyboard to shut the VM, but a message appeared across the top of the video feed. Do not move. I froze, not because I wanted to, but because something about the message felt personal, directed. It didn't look like system text. It had been typed manually, and then the video feed changed. The person on the floor lifted a hand, limp, trembling, and pointed at the camera, then pointed downward, then pointed at the wall behind them. Then the feed cut to black, but the message stayed. You are watching the wrong room. My hands were shaking, not metaphorically, literally shaking. Before I could react, another line of text appeared. Leave. The feed shut itself off. The interface reverted to the main menu. My cursor reappeared, but something was off. It wasn't moving the way it should. It had a slight delay, a slight pull, like someone else was controlling it with me. I didn't click anything else. I didn't breathe. I didn't think. I force terminated the VM, or tried to, but the VM stayed running, and a final message appeared before everything blinked out. You saw nothing. When the VM finally shut down, it didn't close cleanly. The entire window collapsed into a smear of green static before disappearing like an old CRT losing power. That alone made my heart pound. My fail-safe scripts never behave like that. They cut everything instantly, cleanly, without noise. Static meant interference. It meant someone had gotten in through a layer I thought was airtight. I stared at the blank desktop for a long time. I don't know how long. It could have been minutes, could have been an hour. My breathing was uneven, shallow. Not because I thought someone was coming for me physically. That kind of danger I can understand. You can fight a person, you can outrun a person. But whatever I had just connected to, that wasn't normal human activity. That wasn't something created by drug dealers, hackers, scammers, or criminals. It was something organized, something layered, something purposeful. The worst part? It felt old. Not in a historical sense, not like ancient society nonsense, but old as in tested, refined, perfected over years or decades. There was no clutter, no inconsistencies, no amateur mistakes. It was precision. No marketplace in the deep web operates with that level of intentionality. And what I saw in that witness feed, that wasn't a crime being committed. That was a ritual, a procedure, a process. I needed air. I pushed myself away from my desk, opened my windows and sat on the floor just to feel something real under my hands. But the moment I closed my eyes, I saw the face from the feed again. Blank, slack, staring right through me. Like a puppet waiting for strings. I told myself maybe I hallucinated part of it. Lack of sleep, hours staring at a monitor. The brain can play tricks, but the message, you are watching the wrong room. That was too specific, too deliberate. I went back to my computer. My first instinct was to wipe everything. Full disk sanitization, reset the BIOS, replace the VM with a fresh clone. But before I did anything, I checked the logs. They were completely clean. Not clean, as in nothing was found. Clean as in erased. Not overwritten, erased. No timestamps, no event traces, no packet logs, not even empty shells. Removing logs that surgically requires root-level access. But I was inside a VM. There shouldn't have been a way for anything to reach the host machine. Yet the log folders themselves were empty. I checked the virtualization logs in the host OS. Same thing. Zeroed out. Not overwritten. Removed with surgical precision. That scared me more than the video feed. Because wiping logs without touching anything else means one thing. Someone didn't want me to panic. Someone wanted me to pretend this never happened. The fact they didn't destroy the entire system meant they weren't trying to silence me. They were sending a warning. I shouldn't have gone back. I know that now. But fear has a strange effect on people. Some run, some freeze, some fight. I investigate. I needed to understand what I stumbled into. I needed to know whether that marketplace had targeted me specifically, or if I had wandered into something meant for a different set of eyes. So, stupidly, I launched a brand new virtual machine. Fresh install, clean environment, no personalized signatures, no identifiable strings. I wasn't planning to go back to the marketplace. I just wanted to retrace the steps, see where the link originated, reproduce the initial discovery. But when I opened the Onion index again, the link was gone. Not broken, not dead, gone. As if it had never existed. I checked cached versions of the page across multiple mirrors. Nothing. I checked offline archives. Still nothing. The exact hash-like address wasn't present in any listing I had access to. That meant one thing. The link didn't come from the index. The index had been manipulated in real time for me. Someone had inserted the link specifically into my session. Someone had been waiting. At that point, rational thought started slipping. My hands kept shaking, my breathing kept speeding up. I had dealt with threats before, feds, cybercriminals, rival hackers. But this was different. This wasn't a threat. This was a stalker. A system aware of me. I shut the VM down and disconnected from the internet entirely. Pulled the Ethernet cable. Killed the router. Even turned off my phone. I didn't touch anything for hours. Just sat there, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But around 3 a.m., something happened that made me realize the danger wasn't just digital. My monitor turned on by itself, not the computer, just the monitor. A black screen with a single string of white text. Still curious? I jumped out of my chair so fast I knocked it over. The monitor wasn't connected to anything. The cable was unplugged from the PC. There was no input source, no way for a signal to be displayed. I forced myself to go back and look at the message. The text stayed on the screen for maybe 10 seconds. Then it blinked away and the monitor went back to its default, no signal state. I unplugged the monitor entirely and sat on the floor again, feeling like my mind was splitting between fear and disbelief. Monitors cannot display text without an input. That's not how electronics work. But something had just broken that rule in front of me. Sleep was impossible. I stayed awake until the sky turned blue, waiting for something else to happen. When nothing did, I finally forced myself to plug everything back in. I know, stupid. But at that point, daily life had to resume. Work had to get done. The first thing I checked was my network logs, fresh ones that should have been generated while the machine was powered off. And that's when I noticed something else horrifying. I had no MAC address, not blocked, not spoofed, not changed. There was no MAC address displayed at all. My network interface was showing up as a ghost device, a phantom. That should be impossible. Every network adapter has a MAC address burned into its hardware. Even spoofing requires overwriting. But mine wasn't overwritten. It was unreadable. It was as if the system didn't trust the network card anymore. An hour later, the MAC address suddenly reappeared. No explanation, no reboot. It just came back. I knew what it meant. Something had burrowed deeper than software. Something had reached into the firmware. Something had touched the machine's identity. That wasn't hacking. That was possession. I spent the next 3 days trying to trace what happened, digging through logs, reverse engineering my own setup, even analyzing the drive sectors manually. But there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Whatever had spoken to me, the marketplace or whoever ran it, had dug into my system and left no fingerprints. By day 4, the fear had evolved into something worse: obsession. I started combing through darknet forums, not the public ones, the private ones, the ones where you don't speak unless spoken to, the ones with invitation chains older than I am. I asked subtle questions, dropped hints, tried to see if anyone knew anything remotely similar to what I had seen. But every time I mentioned the marketplace, even vaguely, threads went silent. Conversations died. Accounts that had been active for years suddenly stopped posting. I wasn't just breaking rules. I was touching something taboo. One user, someone I'd talked to before, a guy who specialized in OSINT scraping, sent me a private message. It contained only one line: "Don't ask about rooms you weren't meant to see." I replied, asking what that meant. He didn't answer. His account disappeared 20 minutes later. Not banned, not deleted, gone, as if it never existed. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was pattern. I stopped asking questions. I stopped digging. But the marketplace wouldn't stop coming back to me. A week later, around 2 a.m., my VM booted by itself. I wasn't even at my desk. I heard the fan spinning and ran over, heart pounding. The VM had launched without my command. Tor had opened. My VPN chain had initialized, and a window was already loading. The same black background, the same white monospace text. Invitation extended. I hovered my mouse over the corner of the VM, ready to kill it instantly. And then another line appeared. "You may decline." The cursor froze. My keyboard became unresponsive. The VM locked me out entirely. Then the screen changed again. This time it wasn't text. It was a live feed, but not one from the marketplace, not some dark ritual room, not a stranger. It was my room, my camera, my face, live, except it wasn't live, because I was standing behind my chair looking at the screen. But the feed showed me sitting at the desk, sitting still, staring at the monitor, breathing slowly, calmly, like a perfect doppelganger, like a replica that wasn't actually me. And then the version of me in the feed turned and looked directly into the camera, not the webcam camera, the camera of the feed, the wrong direction, the impossible direction, because the figure wasn't looking at the camera's lens. It was looking at me, through the screen, like it saw me standing in the wrong place. I panicked. I yanked the power cable from the PC tower. The VM didn't shut down. The monitors didn't turn off. The feed kept playing, and the version of me on the screen smiled. A slow, uncanny smile that stretched too long, too wide. Then the feed warped, corrupted, shattered into static. The monitors turned black, and 4 words appeared. "You already entered." I dropped to the floor. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't scream, couldn't move, couldn't comprehend. Everything logical had dissolved. Everything normal had been violated. That night broke whatever remained of my resistance. For the next few days, I didn't touch my computer. I unplugged every device in my house. I even slept on the couch to avoid being near anything with a screen. But no matter what I did, every time I tried to relax, I felt watched. Not from outside, not from cameras, from the digital shadows inside the machines. And then something happened that pushed me past fear into full collapse. I received a package. No return address, no stamps, no sender. Just a small black box with my first name handwritten on it. I didn't order anything. No one knew this address. I don't use my real identity for anything online. My physical location should be untraceable. I opened the box with shaking hands. Inside was a single USB drive. No brand, no markings, completely blank. And a note. 4 words written in the same handwriting as the label. "Witness your harvest key." I dropped the box. It fell open on the floor. I didn't plug the USB in. I wasn't suicidal. But as I stared at it, one thought kept punching my mind. They didn't send this to threaten me. They sent this because they think I belong to them now. That was when I decided to disappear from the darknet entirely. I dismantled my rig piece by piece, destroyed the drives, broke the chips, desoldered the USB controllers. I erased everything connected to my former identity. I rebuilt my entire setup from scratch using hardware I handpicked anonymously, and I burned the USB drive. For the first time in my life, I wanted nothing to do with the deep web. I wanted to vanish from it like I had never existed. But the story doesn't end there, because the marketplace wasn't done with me. For a while, things were quiet, too quiet. After destroying all my hardware and rebuilding everything offline, I lived like a ghost. No deep web, no forums, no darknet contacts. I used my machines for basic work only. No Tor, no VPN chains, nothing that could pull me back into that world. For a month straight, nothing strange happened. No phantom connections, no unauthorized monitor flickers, no messages. The silence became its own kind of torture, but it was still better than the alternative. I convinced myself I had escaped, that whoever or whatever was behind that hidden marketplace had lost interest in me. I was wrong. Because one night, as I sat alone in my apartment, my phone vibrated. Not my main phone, my offline phone. The one with no SIM card, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, nothing. A device that wasn't supposed to be able to receive anything at all. The notification wasn't from any app. It wasn't even formatted like a standard alert. It simply read, "Still watching?" My heart dropped. The only way a device like that could display anything is if it was compromised on a physical, firmware, or bootloader level. That meant one thing. They had access to hardware I didn't even know could be accessed remotely. I threw the phone into the sink and ran water over it until it died. But the damage was already done. They wanted me to know I wasn't out, that my attempt to disappear had been meaningless, that I hadn't left the marketplace because I had never been a visitor. I had been claimed. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room, all lights on, staring at the blank TV screen like it might suddenly come alive. I didn't move until the sun came up. I decided to do something drastic. Leave the city. I packed 2 backpacks, one with clothes, the other with my remaining electronics all wiped clean. I took a bus out of town paying in cash, avoiding cameras, avoiding patterns. I rented a room 2 towns over under a fake name. No electronics except a dumb phone I bought from a street vendor. For a day, I felt safe. Then that evening, the TV in the cheap motel room turned on by itself. No input, no remote, no cable. Just a sudden flash of light filling the room, making my bones vibrate. The screen didn't show a channel. It didn't show static. It didn't show menus. It showed the same black background I had seen the first time I entered the marketplace, and the same white monospace text. "Stop running." I stumbled backward and nearly tripped over the bed. My mind was breaking. I wasn't dealing with hackers. I wasn't dealing with criminals. I wasn't dealing with human behavior at all. The text disappeared. Then another line appeared. "You entered the room when you saw the face." My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Another line. "Entry is not reversed by distance." Another. "You belong to the layer now." I screamed at the screen. I don't remember what I said. Maybe I begged. Maybe I cursed. Maybe I broke down entirely. The motel walls absorbed everything. Then the screen flickered, and a video feed appeared. Not the ritual room. Not the puppet-like figure. Not the distorted faces. It was footage of me. The video showed me sitting at my computer weeks earlier, the night I first clicked the link. The camera angle wasn't from my webcam. It was from behind me, over my shoulder, from a vantage point inside the room where no camera existed. I watched myself typing, leaning in, swallowing nervously. Then the figure from the ritual room appeared behind me in the video. But that never happened. I was alone that night. I swear I was alone. The figure's head lowered slowly toward my shoulder in the recording. Its eyes stared at the back of my head like it could see through my skull. Present Me backed away from the screen, horrified. Recorded Me sat still, unaware. The figure whispered something into the back of my neck. I couldn't hear it. There was no audio, but whatever it said, Present Me felt it. A sudden coldness wrapped around the base of my skull like invisible fingers touching my spine. The recorded figure stepped out of frame. The camera angle changed, and the screen displayed a final message. Witness complete. The TV turned off. I left the motel within seconds, grabbed my bags and ran. Not walked, ran. I didn't pay. I didn't look back. I just ran until my lungs were ripping open. And for weeks after that, I drifted. City to city, room to room, never staying more than 2 nights, avoiding electronics, avoiding screens, avoiding anything that could watch me back. But then something changed. Not an attack, not a message, not a threat. A dream, a recurring dream. A dark hallway, lit by a single green-tinted bulb. A door at the end, and behind the door, a whisper, not words, just a presence. I could never open the door, but I always woke up cold, sweating, shaking. And every morning I'd find a new bruise on my back, or shoulder, or neck. Like someone had gripped me in my sleep. I knew what the bruise meant. Someone had touched me in the dream, which meant someone had touched me outside the dream. I had to break the cycle. I had to do something drastic. So one night I did the unthinkable. I went back. I rebuilt a disposable rig, launched a new virtual machine, opened Tor, and I typed a message into the void. Not a link, not a command, just one sentence. What do you want from me? For 2 minutes, nothing happened. Then the screen shifted, black background, white text. Now you ask the right question. I swallowed hard. What do you want? The response came instantly. Completion. My fingers trembled over the keys. Completion of what? This time the answer was slower. Completion of your role. My pulse hammered. What is my role? The screen flickered, and instead of text, a series of symbols appeared. The same sigils I'd seen on the homepage of the marketplace, except now one of them was glowing. The last one. Harvest. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I'm not part of that. The response cut through the air like a blade. You entered the room. The room does not forget. A second line appeared. You witnessed. Now you are witnessed. Then a third. Harvest is observation. Observation is continuity. I didn't understand. I didn't want to understand. I forced myself to type again. What happens if I refuse? A pause, longer than before. Then, refusal is irrelevant. Then another line. You already serve. I shut the VM down, ripped the Ethernet cable out, unplugged the tower. My heartbeat felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. I didn't sleep. For days, nothing happened. No messages, no screens, no anomalies, no dreams, just silence. And then, after a week, the final sign came. I woke up with a small symbol pressed into the skin of my shoulder. A faint mark, the same shape as the harvest sigil. Not a tattoo, not a bruise, something in between, like someone had traced it onto me with the heat of a fingertip. I touched it and felt nothing. No pain, no warmth, just a shape that wasn't there the night before. And in that moment, everything clicked. They didn't want me to buy anything. They didn't want me to sell anything. They didn't want me to participate in some operation. They wanted me to witness, because whatever that marketplace was doing, it needed an audience. It needed observers. It needed continuity. And by seeing what I saw, by entering the room, I had become part of the system. Not physically, not digitally, but metaphysically, philosophically, in whatever twisted architecture they operated in. I wasn't hunted. I wasn't targeted. I wasn't chosen. I was inducted. By accident. By curiosity. By stupidity. And the worst part? The mark on my shoulder. It fades every morning, but it always comes back at night, and I've seen it glow once. Only once. When I looked into a dark mirror and saw a second face behind mine, smiling. I don't go into the deep web anymore, but it doesn't matter. Because once you find the marketplace no hacker talks about, once you enter the room you weren't meant to see, the marketplace never leaves you. And what you witness, witnesses you back, forever. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. Most people wouldn't dare listen this far, and the fact that you did means more than you realize. If you want more true deep web confessions, stories no one else has the nerve to tell, subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who thinks they understand what lies in the dark. They don't. Not yet.